Welcome to the SBA webinar number 2 on market research. I'm your host, Deborah Hellbach, and today I'm here with Salik Hasan Aslam, and he is our SBA marketing expert. Salik and I have worked together in the past on a number of different accelerators. Most recently, that was during the pandemic. We worked on the Food Business Refresh program, and then most recently on the SBA or Seafood Business Accelerator pilot program. So with that, the goal of the Seafood Business Accelerator is to help entrepreneurs, seafood entrepreneurs, farmers, processors, fishers, capture more value for their harvests. So how about we start, Salik, with an introduction from you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll segue into market research from there.
Thank you so much, Deborah. So as Deborah has already talked about how we worked together in the past, and it was a lovely experience, by the way. Got to learn so much, and yeah, it was amazing. But yeah, let me introduce myself. So I'm currently working with a company called Farm Food Drink. We are a team of food industry specialists, and we help small food processors with business planning, financial management, market research, and marketing. And a little bit about my background, just to really help you understand why I'm in this business of market research. So I have a background in education, higher education, I should say. And what's always bothered me about academic research is that there is a disconnect between that research and the real life problems, particularly when we talk about small scale food processors and producers. We have tons of literature and resources for large corporations. But when it comes to small scale, we don't have many of those resources.
Yeah.
So that led me on this journey, and I finally found my niche. And here I am. I'm helping small scale food processors with their market research, helping them find what they're looking for to succeed and grow their business.
Thanks, Salik. And there's so much to say about what you just said. So yeah, there's very little information available for small scale food processors, and even less for seafood, right? So that was something that I found out when I started working at the Center for Seafood Innovation, is, then how much there's a need for help. I also want to mention something. I mean, Salik and I have known each other since 2020, since the pandemic. We worked on that project together, and we have never met in person. And,
yes.
This is one of these things. I have this love-hate thought about the technology, like sometimes it just drives me crazy, but boy, oh boy, have the media conferencing and things like Zoom and Teams and all these different things have really opened the world to all of us. And in fact, if you haven't already watched, I think it's webinar maybe 3 on grant writing and funding. The interview there was with Noortje, who's in the Netherlands, right? So today Salik is in Surrey, I think.
Yes.
I'm in Victoria. The company that Salik works for is based out of Nanaimo. And you may be, anywhere in the world, the people that are watching this. And it's really important to know that, because what that means is that you can have help from people from anywhere in the world, to move your project forward. So with that, Salik, let's talk a little bit about the Seafood Business Accelerator before you move into your market research presentation. So can you were an expert, you worked with some of the participants. How would you describe the Seafood Business Accelerator?
Yeah, that's a great question, Deborah. In my view, this is a great platform for all of the different groups that you've just mentioned, the fishermen, the small scale seafood processors, and other forms of seafood businesses to get the coaching, mentoring, guidance for different stages of planning a seafood business, actually. But what I find really valuable about this seafood business accelerator is the ability of the participants to connect with each other.
Mm.
It's the peer-to-peer learning that I think is extremely valuable, and the support that they could get from each other can be really valuable.
Yeah, no, that's a great comment. And then on the innovation plan, what do you see its value? So, our viewers today are here to learn how to fill in the market research box in their innovation plan. How do you see that helping them as they move forward with a project?
So, Deborah, a plan of any kind is extremely useful. Whatever you're doing, a plan could significantly reduce your chances of failure. Even if it's a road trip that you're planning, if you plan it properly, you could, reduce the risks or pitfalls. So, this innovation plan is a roadmap essentially, and it not only guides the businesses in their journey to grow and expand, but it also can be used as a communication tool for, external
Yeah.
organization. A lot of these people are looking for funding, so it's a nice way to put all of the different components of your planning and communicate with the right people.
Great. Well, I think that's a great way to start into your presentation. So I'll turn the screen over to you, Salik, and you can start presenting on market research.
Yes, absolutely. As Deborah mentioned, we'll be talking about the market research section within the innovation plan canvas. So by now, you must be familiar with the innovation plan canvas and what users are. So market research, very interesting connection between what I do at Farm Food Drink. An interesting thing that I would like to mention here is my two roles that I have at Farm Food Drink. So one is market research lead, and the other one is the workshop development. So one of the important things that we do in workshop development before we start developing the workshop is the needs analysis, just to find out what is the need for that workshop. So we ask a number of these questions that help us understand if this is really something that people would find useful. In that sense, it is very similar to what we do in market
Yes.
research. And so that's why I find this connection very interesting and I really enjoy that. So, market research is something that we do in our daily lives all the time. So, when we're looking for a mobile phone, when we're buying a house, sometimes when we're looking for a good movie to watch,
Right.
we do some kind of research. But in terms of market research for business, simply put, it is really a process of gathering information to inform decision making. A lot of people are familiar with market research as a way to inform marketing related decisions, but I see it as a useful way to make decisions related to other areas of business, including operations, including choosing the right suppliers and whether to expand into a new market.
Yeah, well said.
So in this slide, I want you to really focus on this one keyword, and that one keyword is purpose. So it's important for you to really understand why you want to do market research. There are a number of different reasons why you would want to pursue research. So if I just go back to the previous slide, the SBA project focus is really your purpose for doing this market research. So you really have to keep it at the top of, the purpose. So market research helps you gather information on the market, whatever aspects of the market you're trying to explore. It helps you guide strategies and it helps you refine your planning. And how does it do that? It's basically through informed decisions. And it can also act as the basis for a sound and practical feasibility analysis. That is something we'll talk about in a few slides.
Yeah, great.
So here we're essentially talking about the type of or types of information that we gather through market research. So there is industry analysis and then there is market analysis. So, Deborah, you might be wondering what the difference between these two types of analyses is. And it's a question that we get asked a lot by workshop participants and our clients. And people who've written a business plan might be familiar with, these two terms. There are a few different ways to answer the question or to really highlight the difference, but I'm just going to use one easy and simple way to answer that. Industry is basically a combination of similar types of companies and businesses.
Yeah.
But really, essentially, we see this as a unit of the economy. The example that I used when I said some people might be looking for funding as part of this project, the funders are really interested in this type of information. They love how what the general trends within the industry are. Is it growing? Is it declining? What is the size of the sector? And so investors, funders, they love this type of
Yeah.
information
Yeah.
because they want to be able to know if whatever they're investing in is actually going to, give them the best bang for their buck. And market analysis, on the other hand, is very specific. It's specific to your business, and you're specifically looking at your market. So if you're a tuna fish producer, for example, you're not likely to look at the entire seafood sector and what the market trends are. You'll do that in the industry analysis, but for the market analysis, you're specifically looking at your own market. What are the characteristics of your customers? What are their preferences? And you'll only focus on the competitors within your market. And you might also look at other economic trends as well.
Right. Yeah. Good.
So here, the keyword is objectives. Now, a lot of people, they confuse the term purpose and objective. They use these two interchangeably. Now, I want to highlight the difference between the two by giving you the example of purpose being long-term, broader, and the example that I gave you in the beginning, the SBA project focus is your purpose. But what is it that you're doing to realize or fulfill that purpose is your objectives. So if you're someone who's looking to establish a seafood processing facility, your objectives are going to be, first of all, establishing the size of the market. You would want to look at the industry or market trends. You might want to identify any potential competitors in the market.
Yeah.
And you would definitely want to identify the target market segments. So when we talk about objectives, these are just some of the examples, and it's really dependent on the purpose of your research. So firstly, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this research? And then in the objectives, you really have to think about what is it? What type of questions do I need to ask in order to fulfill that purpose?
Right. Right. Good. No, that's good, Salik. That came up with, when you're doing your funding applications as well. Often you'll be asked, what is the purpose of this project? And then what are your objectives? So, what it is that you're going to do to get it done. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Good. Yeah.
Yes. And objectives, I'm someone who is extremely objectives oriented in whatever I do because it helps you stay focused, whether
Yeah.
it's research, whether it's this presentation. So if I understand the objective, it will help me stay focused. So
Right.
that holds true for anyone who's conducting a project. So objectives really help you stay focused and help you get to the end point with minimal hassle. So this is an oversimplified diagram that shows the market research steps. It is hardly ever this linear. There is, a lot of back and forth. It can be a non-linear process, but it just really depends on the complexity of your project or whatever you're trying to accomplish. Planning usually is something that you should be spending most of your time on, because if your planning is comprehensive, then you'll have minimal roadblocks, you'll have minimal hurdles, because in the planning you somewhat predicting some of the barriers, and also for your record, you're also listing some of the contingencies. The plan is really about, first of all, the objectives, and then the types of methods that you will be using to collect the information. Sometimes at the data collection stage, you realize that the methods that you initially thought you would use to collect data are not sufficient. So you might need to use a different method to collect the data. Sometimes you find that the data that you've collected is insufficient. So you might need to add, a method or two to collect more information. And then you can move on to the analysis and the reporting. And action is something, even if you don't decide to take any actions or act upon the findings of the research, it is still a good idea to outline some action steps and then deliberate on that.
Yeah.
So, do you see anything strange in this slide? Anything that is unusual, Deborah?
Yes, well said, Salik. Yeah, and Salik's going to get into this, but we usually do secondary research first, and primary research second. I have no idea what the history is behind that, and we're not going to get into it. But Salik's going to tell us what the difference is between the two.
Yeah, and this is, Deborah, you're not alone. We get asked this question all the time, and it is one of those fun ways to kick off this section when we're doing a workshop. We ask participants, what they're supposed to do first, and they also mostly say it's the primary research. But the easiest and the simplest way to distinguish between these two and avoid any confusion is to understand that the naming isn't based on the order in which they are conducted. It is based on the sources of information that we use in the two types of research. So for example, in secondary research, using secondary resources, secondary data. And what I mean by that is it is data and the sources that already exist. This could be as simple as doing a Google search. You can find a lot of reports online. You could get very useful information from certain websites. And primary, on the other hand, it is something that is specific to your business. Something that you have deliberately designed, planned, and executed to get specific answers that you're looking for. So, this is just a list of examples of sources. There are a number of different sources out there that could help you with this secondary research. But the most important thing to remember here is making sure that the sources that you're using to collect this secondary data are actually authentic and credible. There are different ways to establish the authenticity and credibility. We're not going to get into the details of that, but you can do an online search and you should be able to find ways to establish credibility of a source. A lot of people, they use their gut test. That is also one of the ways to establish the credibility, but you still have to make sure that you leave your biases out of that, because if you let your biases influence that, the data is not credible and it's not authentic.
I was going to mention that you have to think that it's credible research, especially if you are applying for funding, or you're going to be referring to the research that you did to a potential investor, or if you're going to be making some kind of a claim that your product does such and such, you need to have that data that where you retrieve that data handy. So, and when we're doing the innovation plan canvas, and you're only making a very, very high level summary of what you're going to do in your canvas, you will need backup documentation to back up what you did. So if you did research with Canada, Statistics Canada, you would keep that document in a folder so that you could find it again if anybody ever asks you, where did you get that information from?
Absolutely. And again, like, it is useful for the investors, and it is equally useful for yourself, because sometimes people think that the credibility of the data or the statistics doesn't really matter if it is not going to be a part of a funding proposal, or if it's not going to be a part of, like, any kind of external investment proposal. That thinking is flawed, because then you'll be acting upon data that is not credible, and it might lead you to failure as well.
Right, yeah.
And then we have a few examples of primary research. Now, the key difference between secondary research and primary research is secondary research is quick. As I mentioned, like, you could do a quick Google search and you could get information through a lot of these secondary sources, and it's cheap as well. Primary research, on the other hand, because it requires more planning, it is costly, it is time consuming, but it gives you specific information which is useful for your business or for your project. But I also get asked this question quite often: how do we draw this line, or how do we decide if we should stop after secondary research or continue on to primary research? Because it's a decision that involves cost and money and resources. And my answer is to look at the level of commitment. What's the end goal that you're trying to accomplish? A very basic example: if you're looking to buy a house, you might be willing to pay someone to do some of that research, do the paperwork. You are willing to invest a little more in that process compared to when you're looking for a vacuum cleaner. You're not likely to put in the same amount of resources, the same amount of time. You're likely to just look at some Google reviews or maybe some other websites. But the amount of resources, the amount of time, it really depends on your end goal. So it doesn't really make sense to do primary research like a focus group if you're just looking to change your label design. There are other ways within primary research that you could accomplish that, other cheaper ways. Technology has made things a lot easier for us. And so one thing that I haven't mentioned here is there are observational methods that can be used in primary research, and they have been used for decades. Like in supermarkets, I don't know if we still have that. People standing there just observing, like, how people interact with these different products. Like, it might creep you out, but they're just basically making observations on how much time people spend in the aisle, like how are they interacting with different product categories. So that can be very useful and interesting kind of research data as well. And that could also inform some of your decisions.
Yeah, I think I'll just mention here, though, that you want it to be objective, or unbiased as well. So asking your grandmother to evaluate your product, or somebody who doesn't want to say anything without offending you is not unbiased research, right? So don't buy a house based on somebody who really wants you to have that house without actually looking at. Actually, that's not the right analogy, but yeah, you want to have people who may be consumers of your product, or people that are going to use your processing facility. You want to have a very good target audience for your research, which we're going to talk about in another webinar.
Exactly. That's a great point, Deborah. And this is something we talked about earlier in the presentation, the feasibility analysis. So it could be used for businesses who are starting out, or established businesses who are looking to launch a new product. So this test or this analysis can be used in a number of different situations. But market research essentially helps you answer the first two components here in the feasibility analysis: the product or service feasibility. As Deborah mentioned, that you need to make sure that you have the records on the utility or the acceptance of the product, however you want to record that, but it has to be there. And how do you get that? It's, through interaction with the target audience, potential customers who will be buying your product, who will be using the product. So it is extremely important to keep track of that and to record all of that information. The other more obvious one is the industry and market feasibility that we've already talked about. So we wouldn't want to invest in an industry that is shrinking, or in which the trends are obsolete. For example, that doesn't want to use technology. Or we wouldn't want to invest our time and energy in a product for which a market doesn't exist, or a market is very small, or it is not located anywhere in your geographic surroundings. So, if it's on the other side of the world, it might not be very feasible. So you might want to rethink. The overall way to conduct this feasibility analysis is to ask certain questions in each of these different categories. And if you get a no in at least one of them, you have to rethink it. You have to go back to the drawing board and see what needs to change. So I just wanted to add an example just to make it easier for our audience to understand the importance and significance of market research. And I use the example of Clearwater because, first of all, it's Canadian and it's the largest vertically integrated harvester, processor, and distributor in North America, which is great. So in some ways, some of our audience might not be able to relate with this, but what they did with market research is what I wanted to really highlight. So before I go into the details of the example, I just want to mention that they have historically been business to business only, but as a result of the market research findings, they changed their business model. So again, what I mentioned in the very beginning, that the findings of the market research are not necessarily limited to your marketing decisions. It could also influence your decisions related to your operations, supply chain. So back in 2015, they added a new vessel to their fleet that significantly increased, I think it doubled their intake of one of their key products, which obviously this increased capacity led them on this journey to look for new markets. So as one of their previous market research findings, it revealed that China is a lucrative market. So that was the secondary research because it was done previously. It was not specific. So that based on that, secondary research findings, they decided to dive deeper into the Chinese market and find out more information. So this market research revealed that there was a huge demand for their products. For seafood products generally, but that was something they could capitalize on. And that led to a shift in their overall business model. And then they decided to sell directly to customers.
Right.
So previously it was B2B, and then they shifted to B2C. So amazing transition, expansion, and a great use of market research findings.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I really like that you're highlighting, shifting business models. So the innovation plan canvas, it's not necessarily for new product development. It could be for a new service or a new business model. It's a change that you're going to make to your company, and you need to do the research to see the research, into funding, into regulations, into all the different aspects that have been outlined in that canvas in order to make an informed decision. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Absolutely. So coming back to the innovation plan canvas, as I mentioned, just keep the purpose of this research in mind. So obviously we're only talking about market research in this presentation, but you can easily find that in the SBA project focus. And based on that, you could start thinking about what is it you want to do in the market research. So think about the objectives. And these objectives should be measurable, they should be achievable, and they should be a timeline that tells you when do you need to complete these by. So that can be extremely useful. And these are some of the examples of market research entries that you could add to the market research section of the innovation plan. These are very general. We just wanted you to get an idea of like, what sort of a wording or what's the outcome that you can add to the market research section. But as I mentioned, it is extremely useful to add the I kind of
Smart
lost.
goals. So
Yeah.
we actually Brady covered that in seminar one or webinar
Mhm.
one, where we talked about you want to have specific measurable outcomes in your box. But
Mhm.
to start with, it's fine when you start to have something kind of broad and general. So you know that, okay, I'm really going to focus in on what is the industry outlook, what is the market for seafood, and then and what are people looking for, and then from there you would dive in deeper. So exactly like Salik said, we this is an example of what you could put in as a starting entry, and then as you do more research, then you can make it more something that you can measure and you can actually see. I said that I was going to look at the how big the market is for recyclable packaging in the seafood sector by March 31st, and that
Mhm.
would give you a timeline and when you're going to get something done. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
And I also really liked the suggestion that you could use two versions of the innovation plan. One in which you're basically just mentioning the objectives,
yeah.
and a different version in which you're basically mentioning the outcomes of those objectives. So that's also a very great way to keep track of what you had in mind when you started off and what you ended up with and if there is alignment between the two.
Right, right.
And yeah, so just a few next steps. Deborah, did you want to take our audience through these next steps?
Sure. Thanks, Salik. So very good presentation, Salik. We've covered generally the steps in market research and some of the different kinds of research that you might do. And what we recommend is that you keep looking at the innovation plan canvas. You might have different versions of it. This is when I first started. This is another. This is when I've gone a little bit further along and I know what I want to do. Take a stab at identifying what you need to research from what market research you need to do. Watch the rest of the webinars and then go back again and change if you need to change and update. Excellent, thank you. Every one of the topics that we're covering through this webinar series is very broad. It's really big. And what our goal was, I guess what our objective was, is to provide people with a tool that they could use while they're thinking about an idea. They're thinking about what they might do, and that it provides a map, a guideline for how they can move forward with their idea. And even with just that map, I can tell you that it's very impactful. When we called it our showcase, and we invited people from the community, from funders, potential buyers. They were just blown away at the completed innovation plans that people had, because within 2 minutes they could look at it and they could say, I get it. I get what this person wants to do. What was your experience, Salik, when you worked with some of the people that were working on their innovation plan?
I also had some amazing experiences, and I worked with a couple of people. One of them was looking to develop a new product, which was really innovative. And then another one was looking to establish their own facility, a processing facility. And I felt that having that innovation plan allowed them to have everything in front of them. It allowed them to like really look at the innovation plan and see where the gaps are.
Yeah,
Um, and what they needed to take the next steps. So that's I think one of the really smart things that you've done, in developing the innovation plan as a one pager as opposed to like a document, because you don't always keep track of like what's happening in other sections. But if it's a one pager, everything is right in front of you and you're able to quickly make those modifications.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a really great summation, or of saying what it helps with. Our next webinar is on funding and grant writing, and I've actually alluded to that a few times. But of course, you can watch these webinars in any order that you want to watch them, right? And some may be of great interest, others less so. The whole idea is to, it helps you think about these different aspects. And as Salik so wisely just said, there may be things that you hadn't even thought of, right? And then you look at this canvas and you go, oh, wow. I guess the other thing that might happen is you might come up with some things that aren't on the sheet yet, which is totally fine as well. That's all part of research. So I'm going to close off now, and I hope you enjoy the Seafood Business Accelerator webinars. Thanks, Salik.
Thank you so much, Deborah.